Congrats to the Orioles. I am not going to bury them just yet, as they were able to pick up a series win over the Angels this weekend. And I'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, May 12th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap an Orioles series win as they took 2 out of 3 from the Los Angeles Angels over the weekend. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from Friday's win, including a dominant start from Tomoyuki Sugano. I'm going to get you what you need to know from Saturday's loss, another disappointing outing from Kyle Gibson. And finally, the 5 things you need to know from Sunday's win, Zach Eflin returning, and the Orioles offense finally heating up again in the middle of that game. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So the O's go in to Anaheim, a bad Angels team, and they're able to get out of there winning 2 of 3 and taking the series. And I said this on Friday's episode after the Orioles had just been swept on the road against the Twins to open up this 12-game stretch that should have been their chance to get back into it, playing what I thought was 3 bad teams over 4 series. Well, the Twins are red hot because they just went on and swept the Giants this weekend as well. Now the Orioles have to see the Twins again on Tuesday, so we will certainly see how that goes. However, I basically said it. Like, this Angels team is bad. This Orioles team looked bad. If the O's lose this series this weekend, I'm declaring the season over on the next episode. And hey, luckily, they got a series W. Didn't get the sweep. Thought they should have, but got 2 out of 3. I won't bury them just yet. And let's start with Friday. Friday for the Orioles, they get a 4-1 win to open up this series. They snapped their 5-game losing streak, 2 against the Royals and 3 against the Twins that they had coming into that late night game on Friday. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles Game 1 win over the Angels. And the first thing you need to know is Tomoyuki Sugano somehow keeps getting better. On Friday night, he became the first Orioles starter this season to record an out in the 8th inning. Sugano, with maybe his best start as an Oriole so far, 7 1/3 innings of work, 1 run on 3 hits, 5 strikeouts, no walks on 93 pitches for the right-hander who allowed just 5 hard hit balls, now down to a 2.72 ERA in his big league career so far. And Brandon Hyde let him back out there. He only had him face 1 batter. He came out for the 8th inning. He got Luis Rengifo to ground out, and then Hyde ended up going to the bullpen. But just to see a pitcher come out there in the 8th, record an out in the 8th, we haven't seen a lot of that from Orioles starting pitchers this year. And he pounded the strike zone with fastballs. His velocity was actually up on both his sinker and his 4-seam fastball on Friday. And then he went heavy splitter usage against the lefties as usual, but threw some more against the right-handed hitters in the Angels lineup, got whiffs on that pitch. And the big thing is he did not walk anyone. When you throw 7 1/3 innings and you don't walk anyone, you're going to win a lot of those games. He only had 3 counts that even got to 3 balls. And 2 of those 3-ball counts were a 2-2 pitch. He threw a ball to make it 3-2. And then, of course, did not issue the walk. There was only 1 3-1 count. There was no 3-0 counts. It was pretty impressive what Sugano did with his command. And again, his season's been great overall, but the last 5 starts, kind of after he settled in a little bit with those first 3 big league starts, he has just been incredible. In his last 5 starts, he's thrown 32 1/3 innings. He is averaging over 6 innings per start over those last 5, allowed just 22 hits with 21 strikeouts to just 3 walks in his last 5 starts. That is a 2.23 ERA in that stretch. And in 3 of those 5 starts, he has pitched at least 7 innings. He has been everything and more the Orioles could have asked for when signing him to a 1-year, $13 million deal this offseason, coming over from Japan. It's been funny because, again, it was certainly not a great offseason for Mike Elias and the Orioles, and that is showing out in their record right now. But hidden in there is one of the best signings of the Elias era so far, at least through 8 starts, and that is what Tomoyuki Sugano has meant to this Orioles team. Second thing you need to know from Friday's win is that after Sugano left, Yennier Cano came into the game with the Orioles leading 3-1 with one out and the bases empty in the bottom of the eighth inning. And Cano's struggles continued. Makes it 3 straight bad outings for Cano after he had begun the year 10 2/3 innings scoreless out of the Oriole bullpen. He allowed 2 home runs in his outing last Sunday. He allowed 2 walks when he took the loss against the Twins on Thursday, and then allowed a single and a walk to begin his outing in the eighth on Friday. Now, Cano was able to bear down because he gave up the single and the walk to the 8 and 9 hitters in the Angels order, and then turned it around to face their hottest hitter, Zach Neto, representing the go-ahead run in the bottom of the eighth. And what a battle it was. 13 pitches against Neto, but he finally strikes him out on a 3-2 sinker. Then Keegan Aiken comes in and gets Nolan Shanuel to fly out to escape the jam and keep the Orioles up 3-1. But Yennier Cano, I mean, he had walked just one batter in his first 13 outings. He walked 3 of them in the 2 outings on Thursday and Friday, and just kind of completely lost the command for his changeup and his slider, like his main 2 pitches besides the sinker. He'd thrown 11 changeups and sliders combined in those 2 bad outings, Thursday and Friday, and 0 of 11 were in the strike zone. That is not good. Something is wrong with those pitches. And the ones he threw Friday night were not even close to the zone. So after the hit and the walk, he goes behind 3-1 to Zach Neto, in danger of another walk and loading the bases. And he just said, you know what? My sinker is my best pitch, and it's the only pitch I can throw over right now. So we're just spamming the sinker. And after he goes 3-1, he throws Neto 9 consecutive sinkers, basically between 96 and 97 miles an hour, all down in the zone. Neto swings and misses on the first one. He fouls off 7 consecutive sinkers at the knees, and then swings and misses at the last one, pitch 13, for a huge strikeout. And what it tells you about Cano is his stuff is so good that he can get outs if he's just got the sinker alone. Neto, one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now, he only had 1 pitch, did Cano, against him, and still got him to strike out. But you cannot go a long stretch in a season having just 1 pitch. Unless you are Mariano Rivera, you're really not going to be able to do something like that. And for Cano, that is a little concerning, but he got that final out, was able to come out of the game. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, he did recover on Sunday. He came in, he threw a 1-2-3 inning. He threw his changeup and his slider. And while he didn't get a slider in the zone, he got one of his 4 changeups into the strike zone. So that was at least good to see. Still a bit concerning, but a little better than it looked on Friday night. Now, the third thing you need to know from Friday's win is that, luckily, after the scare in the eighth, Felix Bautista was just so freaking good to close this thing out in the ninth inning with a 4-1 lead, even though he does not have that super premium velocity right now. Like, he comes out there and he's sitting around 97. He's not back to sitting around 100 like he was doing pre-Tommy John surgery in 2023, but he has the great command right now. And I was a little worried, right? He entered Friday night's game 4-1 in the ninth. He had not pitched in a week. He had not pitched since the previous Friday night when he got the save in the ninth to close out a 3-0 win over the Royals. That was the Orioles' previous win before the 5-game losing streak. So they go back to Bautista a week later. You're worried about the rust, not pitching for that long. And the first 2 pitches he threw were fastballs that were each like 2 feet above the zone. They were way, way up for balls 1 and 2. And you're like, oh no, he sat for too long. He's rusty. It's going to be bad command outing. This could be an issue. And then he just kind of locks in and he's like, no, I think I'm okay. And he goes 3 straight fastballs in the strike zone to Yoan Moncada, who takes a called strike 3. And Bautista was off and running. From there, he looked fine. Then he used some good sliders, and it ended up being a 1-2-3 ninth. Now 7 out of 7 on saves this season. And it's been interesting to see him go to the slider. He only threw 2 splitters in the ninth inning on Friday, which is a little surprising. It's not completely abnormal. He's done it before, especially when he had the premium fastball velocity and would really ride that fastball at times. But he only threw 2 splitters Friday. He only threw 2 splitters in the ninth inning on Sunday as well. I'm not saying he's going away from that pitch. It's dominant. But he seems to be feeling good about the command of his other pitches, and especially the slider, which he really went to more than you usually see on Friday night. his slider usage this season is up from 5% in 2023 to 14% this year. Again, it's still not a featured pitch, but to jump at 9% tells me he trusts it more. He likes the feel of it more. And it gives him another weapon when he goes out there against righties and against lefties. Now, the fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles win on Friday night over the Angels is that the Orioles jumped on Kyle Hendricks early with some clutch hits. Hendricks is somehow still pitching in the big leagues despite throwing 86 to 87 miles an hour. And Gunnar jumped on him early, a solo home run in the top of the first off of Hendricks, his fourth of the year, to give the Orioles a 1-0 lead. And it was a good game for Gunnar Henderson. Also delivered an RBI triple in the top of the ninth to make it 4-1, give the Orioles a nice little insurance run in the ninth after their offense had gone quiet for a while. And it was just Gunnar's third game of the season with multiple extra base hits. He had just one extra base hit in May coming into it. And it's his fourth career game with both a home run and a triple, his first since May 17th of 2024 in Seattle. But then the Orioles decided to do a little damage with runners in scoring position in the second inning, looking to add on to their 1-0 lead. They started the inning with two straight walks. Then Jackson Holliday delivered an RBI single with a runner in scoring position to make it 2-0. Then after a strikeout, Emmanuel Rivera, also an RBI single with a runner in scoring position that made it 3-0. Then after a pop-out, Adley struck a ball well, lined out to short on a ball that had a 550 expected batting average. Zach Neto made a great lunging catch at short to rob another run from the O's. And they looked really good. They started 2 for 3. The at-bats were good with runners in scoring position. Unfortunately, the same problems cropped up for the rest of the game because although they started 2 for 3, they finished 0 for 10, and they were 2 for 13 with runners in scoring position in that Friday night win. 1 in the first, 2 in the second, and then just went completely silent until they got the insurance run in the ninth inning. Luckily, the pitching, Sugano and bullpen were just so good that it was okay. But that does still concern you, but maybe the ability to get healthy is going to help out with that. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 4-1 win over the Angels to open up this series on Friday night is that Tyler O'Neill returned to the lineup. He had not played since April 23rd with a neck issue. The Orioles had placed him on the injured list on April 26th. And Melanie Newman had a good report on this on the broadcast. I don't know if it was on the Friday or the Saturday broadcast, but she was saying that basically she had talked to Tyler O'Neill about the neck injury and what was going on and said that O'Neill was trying to play through it for about a week, but he could barely move his neck at times. It went to the point where he was opening up his stance so he could move his neck in a way that he could actually see the pitcher. And he said basically, hey, it caused me to be late on every single fastball. He really struggled for that week or two before he went on the injured list. And you have to think the neck issue was part of the problem. He comes back, he's activated off the injured list, and hey, delivers a single and a walk, reaches base twice in his return. Now, it was somewhat surprising. I thought, hey, Dylan Carlson, an outfielder with options, would just go to AAA when he came back. No, it was Kobe Mayo who was actually optioned to AAA to make room for O'Neill when he was activated on Friday. Now, Mayo was probably going to go down shortly anyway because the word is Ramon Arias will be joining the Orioles on Tuesday and be activated off the injured list with his hamstring issue. And at that point, Mayo was probably going back to AAA. But when you went with the move with Mayo, what you were saying is with Westberg and Arias still both on the injured list, you're saying Emmanuel Rivera is still our everyday third baseman until Ramon Arias gets back. And that's a lot of trust in Rivera, but he started all 3 games at third base this weekend. He delivered another 2 hits on Friday. He had a great weekend overall. I mean, Rivera is doing the same thing that he did late last year when the Orioles got him on waivers. He just keeps hitting for some reason, even though he's never done it in the rest of his career. He's got a 346 average and an 816 OPS since being called up by the Orioles a couple of weeks ago. So you know what? I would still rather see Mayo out there, but they're playing the hot hand. He's delivering, and hey, you can't extremely fault the decision when Mayo's not delivering and Rivera is. It just makes you beg the question of like, when is Kobe Mayo going to get that chance? But hey, I mean, props to Emmanuel Rivera for getting his chance and jumping on it immediately, something that over the last 2 years, Kobe Mayo unfortunately just has not yet been able to do. So the Orioles won the opener and then had a chance to potentially clinch a series on Saturday. Unfortunately, the offense was once again shaky and the pitching was not nearly as good. Kyle Gibson struggled and the Orioles lost game 2 on Saturday night. I'll tell you how it happened coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. I think my favorite part of Monarch Money is the easy collaboration. Been married for almost a year now. Your money kind of comes together when that happens, and managing money with your partner is now smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. So for the Orioles, it was a win on Friday. It was a loss on Saturday as they went into game 2 of the series and fell 5-2 to the Angels on Saturday night. Let's start with what went right on Saturday. That was the soft part of the Orioles bullpen. There have just been way too many games this year in which the Orioles get a bad outing from their starter. They're down big early. They go to the lesser bullpen guys, the mop-up guys, the non-high leverage arms, because you don't want to waste Sir Anthony Dominguez and Yennier Cano when you're already down 6-1 in the fourth inning. But those guys, time and time again, have let it get much worse, and that's how it's turned into a lot of blowout losses for the Orioles this year. Well, that was not the case on Saturday. Colin Selby, who was up with the Orioles as an extra reliever, because Matt Bowman was DFA'd on Thursday. Luckily, Bowman has cleared waivers and accepted an outright assignment to AAA, so he remains in the Orioles organization, as did Walter Pennington, the left-hander, who was also DFA'd last week. But Selby was here as an extra bullpen arm. He came in for Kyle Gibson in the fifth. He got the Orioles out of a jam, and he got 5 outs scoreless. You love getting length from a guy the day before you're going to send him down, because that's what the Orioles did when Eflin was activated on Sunday from the injured list. They did option Colin Selby back to AAA Norfolk to make room for Zach Eflin. Cionel Perez was horrible again, but he threw just enough strikes to get a K on a 3-2 pitch to strand the bases loaded in the 6th inning. And then how about Charlie Morton? He makes kind of the quote-unquote spot start, I guess it was, on Wednesday against the Twins, with Dean Kramer having to be pushed back a day. And then Morton goes right back into the bullpen where he had been. He comes out there, O's are down 5-1 in the bottom of the 7th, just trying to keep it there. And he did a nice job. Morton goes 6 up, 6 down with 2 strikeouts. He got 3 whiffs on the curveball, a 58% in-zone rate with the 4-seam fastball. That's not something we've seen a lot this year. That was certainly great to see. And he only threw 3 of his pitches. He only threw 4-seamer, curveball, and sinker, but the velocity was up on all 3 pitches. And that's something you see from a lot of guys when they transition from starting to the bullpen. They know it's going to be shorter stints. They can air it out a little bit more. Their velocity goes up. And he looked good. Again, it was low leverage. You're down 5-1 in the 7th and 8th innings against not a very good lineup in the Angels, but at least a positive-ish step forward for Morton. As much as I want them to kind of end it with Charlie Morton, the Orioles, unfortunately, they kind of still need to hold on to him. I mean, Trevor Rogers and Chase McDermott are getting healthy, and now they have Luis F. Castillo in the mix at AAA as well. So there are more starting pitching options than there were. But even with Eflin back, like Kyle Gibson stinks, Brandon Young is now on the AAA injured list. You still don't have a lot of great options you feel good about. And Morton's a veteran, and I guess they just don't feel at this point they're ready in early May to move on from a guy they gave a 1-year deal to. So we'll see if he's going to pitch like that out of the bullpen. You can at least roster him as the long man. But we will see. Now, what went wrong from Saturday's loss? Well, that is that Kyle Gibson is moving into Charlie Morton territory. I mean, he was bad again on Saturday and now has a 13.11 ERA through 3 games started. Charlie Morton's ERA never got above 10.89 this year, and his ERA was only 8.78 after his first 3 starts. So it's easy to say Kyle Gibson has started his year worse than Charlie Morton did. And like Morton, he's kind of non-competitive right now. Gibson's final line in the start on Saturday, 4 innings of, or I should say 4+ innings of 5-run ball on 7 hits, 4 strikeouts, 3 walks, and a home run on 79 pitches for the veteran right-hander. And it just wasn't good. Like, obviously that first start was horrendous when he gave up all the homers to the Yankees. Then he was not terrible in that second start against the Royals. Like, he made like 1 bad pitch, or he would have been through there okay. This one wasn't nearly as bad as the Yankee start, obviously, at least did something close to keeping the Orioles in the game, but he was just bad. Just bad again. Like, it's not good stuff. It's not in the strike zone enough. You can't have this guy walking three batters. His 80 location plus, which is a number similar to stuff plus that tries to grade out command for pitchers. That is the sixth worst location plus start of Gibson's career since 2020. That was when the stat kind of became a thing. That's not what you want to see from a guy at 37. His stuff is down. His velocity is down. It's kind of rough to watch. And this stat every time is just, whew, is it something else? The Orioles are now 0-12, 0-12 in games when either Charlie Morton or Kyle Gibson pitch. They are 15-12 in the other games they have played this season. You take out any game you've used Morton or Gibson, the Orioles are a 15-12 baseball team. That's a pretty solid record early in a year. It really tells you how bad the rotation has been and how bad specifically those two has been. And it was certainly exciting to be, getting Zach Eflin back. And it looks like Charlie Morton is going to move back to the bullpen since he did pitch in relief on Saturday. But it still means, at least at this point, you have Kyle Gibson in that five-man rotation, because after the off day today, the Orioles play, I believe, 16 consecutive days starting tomorrow. So you can't go with the four-man rotation anymore. It's got to be five guys. And that includes Kyle Gibson. And quite honestly, it's 6-1, half dozen the other in a fairly negative sense. But from what we've seen from Gibson and what we've seen from Morton more recently, you could make an argument that Charlie Morton gives the Orioles a better chance to win than Kyle Gibson if you were down to one or the other to be the fifth guy in the rotation at the moment. I would maybe argue that Morton gives them a better shot. I mean, it's not an argument I want to have because both have been terrible, but that's how bad Gibson's been, and that is where we're at. So you could see Luis F. Castillo, you could see a healthy Trevor Rogers or Chase McDermott getting back to it, but I mean, Gibson might have one more chance in this rotation. He would be slated to start, it looks like, this upcoming weekend at home against the Nationals. And if that doesn't go well, I mean, there could easily be a Kyle Gibson DFA, and they just go another direction after this didn't really work out. And then the shout out on Saturday, the shout out goes to Jackson Holliday, who was in the leadoff spot for the first time this season in the Orioles order on Saturday. The only other time he's hit leadoff in his big league career was in game 161 of last year in Minnesota. And remember, that game was meaningless. It was the day after the Orioles had won that Friday night game, had clinched up their playoff spot, their seeding, everything. There was nothing else to play for in the final two games of the season. So Hyde rested some guys, moved around the lineup a bit, and Holliday had a great game in the leadoff spot that day. But this is the first time where a game has actually mattered, I guess, and Holliday's been in the leadoff spot. And I would have to guess that this is going to be Holliday's spot long-term in this Orioles lineup. And it was cool to see him there Saturday. Now, he was not hitting leadoff on Sunday. I think that was because there was a left-hander on the hill for the Angels. And I think Brandon Hyde would still push him down the order against lefties. But I think against right-handed starters, Holliday's going to be the leadoff hitter at this point for the Orioles. I would totally be okay with that. He led off the game with a single. He had a walk later in the game on Saturday. And after the slow start, Jackson's been great. He hit that grand slam in the second inning against the Guardians back on April 16th. Since then, he's been red hot. This was coming into play on Sunday. In his 70 plate appearances, starting with that grand slam against Cleveland, he is hitting .322 with a .429 on base, .492 slug. That's a 171 WRC plus. Got a super high 13% walk rate. The strikeout rate's still at 23%, not great, but a 49% hard hit rate is super elite. That 171 WRC plus makes him the 8th best hitter in the American League since April 16th. I mean, he leads the Orioles in on-base percentage in that time. Like, keep him in the leadoff spot against righties. And the other thing has been that, like, Cedric Mullins, who got moved back into that leadoff spot for a while because he was so red hot in April, he has fallen off a cliff. Cedric Mullins hit .278 with a .412 on-base percentage in April and a 17% walk rate, a 170 WRC plus. He was phenomenal. Mullins in May, through Saturday's game, 1 for 30 with 8 strikeouts and 0 walks in the month of May. It basically been terrible. So they moved him down to 6th on Saturday. He hits 8th against the lefty on Sunday after being in the leadoff spot. His hard contact is way down, hit a lot of pop-ups. So those two things, Holliday hitting it well, Mullins looking terrible, kind of the perfect storm to get Holliday in that spot. And I believe the Orioles will be facing a right-handed pitcher tomorrow against the Twins. I would not be surprised if Holiday is right back in there in that number one spot, but it was not enough to get the Orioles offense going. They once again did really not do much offensively in that Saturday game. 6 hits, 4 walks, didn't get the big swing. They they're still not a great team with runners in scoring position right now, and they fall 5-2 to even up the series, but still had a chance to win a road series on Sunday. And it was great to get Zach Eflin back, but you still need your offense to come up big. And finally, the Orioles offense did something. I'll tell you what they did to win the series coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 7 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feeling fuller longer. Now, personally, I love the classic variety. I like to crack open a shell, I like the reward of getting in there to get that pistachio, and it is a delicious treat. But Wonderful Pistachios also has the no shells variety, perfect as a grab and go snack. They've got great flavors on the go. I just had a pack of the black pepper ones literally on Friday. I think it's an amazing snack to have. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So it was a rubber match on Sunday, and the Orioles were able to get it done. Final score from Sunday, the Orioles 7 and the Los Angeles Angels 3, as the O's take the series 2 out of 3, and they leave Anaheim at 15-24 through 39 games on the season. And for the Orioles, 7 runs is something that they they have not done that in a while. You think 7 runs, like, yeah, that's a good offensive output, but you have to think like, oh, it hasn't been that long. No, it's been since April 19th. Their 9-5 win over the Reds. That was the last time the Orioles scored at least 7 runs in a game. It has been a struggle for this offense, but they did it on Sunday, and I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that Orioles 7-3 win. And the first thing you need to know is Zach Eflin finally made his return. He came into this year as the team's ace. He had 3 amazing starts to begin the year, but then on April 8th, he went on the injured list with a lat strain, and the timetable was kind of unclear. Well, he missed just over a month, returning on May 11th to the rotation. He activated Colin Selby option to AAA. The Orioles rotation had a 5.97 ERA in the stretch that Eflin was out. That was 28th in Major League Baseball. Before his injury, they had a 4.69 ERA. Still not great, but 20th instead of 28th. And the biggest difference without Zach Eflin was the starting rotation's ability to eat innings. Before Eflin's injury, the Orioles as a team were 9th in baseball in innings pitched by their starters. That's pretty good. You're keeping your bullpen rested. Your starters are getting semi-deep into games. Since the injury, the Orioles dropped to 28th in Major League Baseball in innings by their starting pitchers. You're getting short starts, you're getting bad starts, and you're digging into your bullpen night after night, and they start to get worse and worse. And now, Eflin was certainly not his sharpest on Sunday. His final line, 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 hits, 5 strikeouts, and 2 walks on 83 pitches, just 3 hard hit balls against the Orioles right-hander in his return. But I'm not going to grade him super harshly in his first start off the injured list after missing more than a month with a lat issue, and when he only made 1 rehab start last Sunday with Aberdeen before saying he was ready to roll. So again, further down the line, he probably gets a chance to come out in the 6th at only 83 pitches with only 2 runs allowed, but he was feeling good. You could tell he was laboring a bit with the command, especially in that final inning in the 5th. The bullpen was in a fairly good spot to cover 4 innings, so Brandon Hyde pulled him out of there, which I'm totally fine with. Even in his next start later this week, if he's in the same spot, I bet he's back out there for the 6th inning. But, he walked 2 batters. You don't see that a lot, including the 9-hitter Tim Anderson to lead off the 5th. That was not good. It was cool to see him still get a 0. But he mixed all 6 of his pitches. He had enough to give the Orioles a good start. His command was a little off at times. It wasn't the number one greatest stuff we've ever seen from Zach Eflin, but he's back in there. And he makes this rotation so much more stable. And it's still not a good rotation. Eflin, Sugano, Kramer, Povich, Gibson is what we're looking at right now. I think if you can replace Gibson with someone better, it starts to look better, but it looks better than it did. It looks a lot more stable. You feel, I mean, the way Kramer and Sugano are pitching, if you can get Eflin, Kramer, Sugano top three, and then more of a rotating door to figure out what you got. I mean, you just have a much more stabilizing presence at the top of your rotation. Just it makes the Orioles a lot better to have Zach Eflin back. They missed him dearly when he was out. Second thing you need to know from this Orioles win on Sunday is that the bullpen behind him was really good. I mentioned the Orioles had the ability to get 4 innings out of the bullpen. None of their high leverage guys had pitched on Saturday. They had the off day coming up here on Monday, so Brandon Hyde knew he could kind of go to his A bullpen to get through this. And they were great. And the bullpen's been a bit of a struggle recently. In that 5-game losing streak against the Royals and the Twins last week, the Orioles bullpen had a 10.80 ERA during those 5 games. But Sir Anthony Dominguez, Brian Baker, Yennier Cano combined to go 9 up and 9 down in the 6th, 7th, and 8th innings against the Angels order on Sunday. That was certainly great to see. It was huge for Cano, who I talked about, like his last 3 outings had been bad. So for him to get a 1-2-3-8 was a great sign. And then they went to Felix in the 9th, and the only base runner the Orioles bullpen allowed in this game was a 2-out solo home run hit by rookie Matthew Lugo, who was called up this weekend. Hit his first career home run off of Felix, a solo shot with 2 outs in the 9th that made it a 7-3 game. First home run allowed by Felix this year. Also, the first hit Felix had allowed on a ball in the air since March 31st. That's how good this guy has been this year. I mean, shout out to that swing by Matthew Lugo on a 98-mile-per-hour Felix fastball. But the bullpen in this series, after the just being so bad in that losing streak, was dynamite. Absolutely dynamite. 9 2/3 innings, 1 run on 2 hits, 12 strikeouts to 4 walks from the Orioles relievers this weekend. Huge reason why they were able to win this series. And the third thing you need to know from the Orioles Sunday victory is that maybe some of the luck is starting to swing in Adley Rutschman's direction. We have talked about how good his approach has been. You know, the walk rate's up, the chase rate is down, the strikeout rate's down. He's looking like the 2023 and previous versions, the all-star versions of Adley Rutschman. And we've also talked about, you know, he's squaring the ball up so well. He's hitting the ball in the barrel more than anybody else. And you know, we're on the sweet spot. And we're talking about how little he has been rewarded this year. Coming into play Sunday, he had a 203 batting average, but a 273 expected batting average. One of the biggest gaps in baseball among hitters. And in the first inning, runner on second, 2 outs. He hits a fly ball to deep left field, but certainly going to stay in the ballpark. It's a pretty high fly ball, super catchable. And Taylor Ward, the Angels left fielder, just loses it in the sun. It falls in. It turns into an RBI triple to give the Orioles a 1-0 lead. And maybe you're like, hey, that wasn't the greatest struck ball of Adley's career. It probably should have been a fly out to left, but he has been so unlucky this year that for him to hit that ball, and he hit it fairly well, 100 miles per hour off the bat, for it to fall in, it must have just felt so good for Rutschman. Now, he did have another hit later in the game. Maybe not all the luck is turning his way because he was robbed of what potentially looked like a 2-run homer in the 7th. It was a good inside-out swing to the left center field, and Kyron Paris made a great catch at the wall. It may have hit off the top of the wall. It may have gone over. It was kind of hard to tell, but maybe not all the luck, but a 2-hit game with 3 hard hit balls. Certainly great to see for Adley Rutschman trying to turn this thing around because under the hood has been great. The results just not there yet for the Oriole catcher. Now, the fourth thing you need to know from that Sunday win, the Orioles finally strung together a bunch of good at-bats in that 5th inning. They were 2-9 against left-handed starting pitchers coming in, and they were facing Tyler Anderson, a good left-handed pitcher with a sub-3 ERA on the season coming in. And besides the gaff in left field in the 1st inning, 4 strong innings from Anderson. Angels had a 2-1 lead entering the 5th. And the Orioles lineup bared down, was patient, was aggressive when they needed to, was not out on the front foot, and just the approach, the swings, it all looked so good in that 5th inning when they get 2 runs to take the lead. Now, they got a little help at the start. Emmanuel Rivera reaches on an error to begin the inning, but then they lock in. Cedric Mullins rips a double into the gap off the left-hander. Had been 1 for 31 in May before that, and then he got another hit in the 6th as well in that rally. Then Maverick Handley drives a ball for a sacrifice fly with 2nd and 3rd, no outs. Yeah, it wasn't a hit with runners in scoring position, but it got the job done from your number 9 hitter, backup catcher, career AAA guy to tie the game at 2. Then Gunnar gets called out on a pitch that was clearly below the knees he wasn't happy with, but the Orioles didn't panic. Ryan Mountcastle makes a really good swing on a 1-2 fastball, ropes into right field for an RBI single to give the Orioles a 3-2 lead. And shout out to Mountcastle, who I have called out multiple times, is now hitting 314 with a 753 OPS in May after a horrendous month of April. He's been better, still not really hitting for power, but at least hitting for average in this Orioles lineup. The approach was just so much better against Anderson in the fifth. They run the pitch count up against a tough lefty. They've been bad against every lefty, but especially a lefty that's been good this year in Anderson. They run up his pitch count to 94. They get him out of there. They force the Angels to go to the bullpen. As I mentioned, second worst bullpen in baseball. They go to the pen in the sixth with the Orioles leading 3-2. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 7-3 victory over the Angels on Sunday to clinch the series is that they finally just kind of broke out and did what they needed to do offensively in that sixth inning. They scored 4 in the sixth, their first 4-run inning since the second inning against the Yankees back on April 30th. It is the first time since April 16th that the Orioles had scored 4 runs in an inning with 1 or 0 home runs hit in the frame. And it's the first time since April 19th that the Orioles had back-to-back innings where they put up a crooked number, back-to-back innings where they put up more than 1 run, when they scored 2 in the fifth and then 4 in the sixth to kind of break this thing open. Ramon Laureano, a leadoff walk, and starts causing havoc on the bases. He steals second, goes to third on a pickoff error, scores on a wild pitch. It's 4-2. Then Rivera walks. Then Mullen singles. And then how about Maverick Handley? After the sac fly earlier for his first career RBI, how about a little squeeze bunt play to get Rivera home from third and make it a 5-2 game? He knows he's not going to be the greatest hitter in Major League Baseball as the Orioles' backup catcher now until Gary Sanchez comes back. But he's handling the bat well and doing his job and drives in 2 runs in this game. And then Gunnar Henderson just caps it off with a big blow. A 2-run homer to make it 7-2, kind of put it out of reach. And Gunnar, who, he started the year on the IL, then he started slow because basically when he came back in April, that was his spring training. It took him 3 to 4 weeks to get going. That's kind of the usual time of spring training. It took him until May, and it has been absolute liftoff in May. Henderson, after that 2-run homer, had another couple of hits on Sunday, now hitting 351 with a 400 on base and a 622 slugging. That is a 1022 OPS in the month of May. He looks like MVP Gunnar Henderson once again. And just in those 5th and 6th innings, so many different ways they scored runs. Great to see for an offense that has just struggled so badly this year. And there are still issues. Right, there are still issues. They are still 3-9 against lefties. This was their first win on a Sunday. They were 0-6 on Sunday until the W on Mother's Day. Like, that's insane to think about. But there's still problems, right? Even though they certainly came through on Sunday and even early in the game on Friday with runners in scoring position. They are still one of the worst teams in baseball in that sense. And even on Sunday, they were still 3 for 12 with runners in scoring position. It wasn't anything fantastic. It was much better than they have been, but there's still work to do there. It's just, this Angels team is bad, but they got a series win. And the offense, finally, it has been so long since the offense looked like that. They woke up in this Sunday game. They get the off day here on Monday, and then they go a few weeks without an off day. They need to get hot. The offense needs to get hot. The rotation's getting healthy. Eflin's back. Rogers is still in AAA, but he looked good again on Saturday. His rehab is over. McDermott is getting close. You've got Castillo there. It's coming together a little bit, right? Ramon Arias should be back tomorrow. Westberg behind him. It still could come back. Then you're looking down the line at Cowser. Things are getting healthier for the Orioles. The rotation's bit by bit getting better. If Sunday is this spark for the Orioles offense to finally kick it back into gear, there is still a chance, because again, it is a very soft schedule here in May. There is a chance to throw it back together, but it has to start with not getting swept by this same Twins team they just did last week. But first, the off day Monday, but I'll still have an episode for you on Tuesday. Thinking about opening up the mailbag. So as always, you can email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com, with a mailbag question, or you can put it right here in the YouTube comments. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube page, and subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and a review wherever you listen to the show as well. Really helps us out. We thank you for your support, even with a 15-24 start to this Orioles season. That'll do it for today's episode. I'll be back tomorrow opening up the mailbag. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.